Chapter 250 of JJK goes absolutely insane. The battle between Sukuna, Yuji, and Yuta gets turned up even more, and we're left off on a cliffhanger for the ages that might indicate just how Yuta and Yuji might finally get the upper hand on Sukuna. All I'm gonna say right now is that Yuta uses a technique that we did not anticipate him having. Totally gonna change the game, but before I spoil anything else, let's get right into it. So in the previous chapter, we left off on the massive reveal of Yuta's domain expansion. The official name of it is Authentic Mutual Love, and it creates this graveyard of katanas, and we didn't get any full details as to what exactly the domain does, other than the fact that one of the katanas he grabbed and threw at Sukuna was the thin icebreaker that Uro used, which made a lot of people assume that each one of those katanas likely contains a cursed technique that Yuta has copied along the way. And on top of that, it seems that Yuta is also able to imbue the sure hit of his domain expansion with one of the cursed techniques he's taken as well. Well, we open up this chapter with even more elaboration on his domain expansion, where it says that Akotsu's all-encompassing unequivocal love allows him to choose any of his copied techniques to imbue the barrier with as the domain's sure hit effect. So he can literally pick any technique he's copied as the sure hit. It goes on to say his remaining copied techniques are scattered randomly among the katanas within the domain. So just as we all expected, nothing super surprising here, but there is a lot of valuable information that we get here next. The narrator continues to say only Akotsu can utilize them, but not even he knows which katana contains which technique until he grabs onto it for the first time. While each katana can only be used once, their number is infinite. So I guess this is a nice little rule to kind of ground the effect, not make the domain like too broken. Akotsu apparently doesn't know exactly which technique is imbued in which katana, and each katana can only be used once, but that doesn't mean that after he uses the katana then the cursed technique disappears, because as the narrator says, there's an infinite number of swords imbued with all the cursed techniques that he's copied. So after this, the battle between Akotsu, Yuji, and Sukuna gets straight up turned to 100 because they start jumping him 3-on-1 once again, that being Akotsu, Yuji, and Rika, and Sukuna, being the battle genius that he is, starts deducing what their plan is and what's going on here as he's fighting. One of the things that Sukuna notices right away is that it seems that Akotsu's using a technique applying an inviolable barrier to his Shikigami's path. As we're about to find out, this is actually Drew's curse technique, who, if you guys don't remember who he is, that's fine because he got killed off by Akotsu within like 5 seconds. He's the one that had the giant weird mole monsters in the Sendai colony before Akotsu fought Uro and Ishigori. So Sukuna continues thinking to himself, after my fight with Gojo Satoru, not only am I still unable to expand my domain, but the effects of my reverse curse technique remain sluggish. At this point, my total cursed energy likely matches the cursed brat, meaning Akotsu. On top of that, maintaining Hollow Wicker Basket renders me unable to use the world bisecting dismantle after extending the target of my technique. So in this short little bit of information, we learn that Sukuna not only can't use reverse curse technique on the level that he normally would, he also can't use the world cutting dismantle attack that he used to kill Gojo. So that kind of puts Yuji and Akotsu on a time limit, because this is likely the weakest that Sukuna is going to be, and they need to put in as much damage as possible. So that's why they continue to bombard him with attacks. We actually get this really funny panel of Rika straight up yeeting Yuji right at Sukuna. I don't know, I just thought it was pretty entertaining. Well, Sukuna then notices something about Yuji, and this is when we get a much more clear picture of what it is exactly that Yuji's doing to Sukuna and what new ability he might have gained. Sukuna goes on to say, he can sense it. He's aiming directly for the barrier between my soul and Fushiguro's. He's working up Megumi's soul that was submerged by the bath and disrupting the harmony between this body and myself. Every time I take a blow from this brat, my cursed energy output falls and my control of this body weakens. They'll just keep chipping away until I can no longer maintain Hollow Wicker Basket, which reveals the real risk, their desire to use the angel's technique, Jacob's Ladder, to eradicate the cursed object within Megumi. So as it was kind of alluded to in the previous chapter, Yuji has somehow managed to directly alter the soul of Sukuna, and he can observe souls so accurately that he's able to distinguish between Megumi's and his own, and with each punch he's pulling apart and disrupting the connection between Sukuna's soul and Megumi's. So he's going to be facing the same problem that he faced when he first took over Megumi's body, when as he tried fighting Yuji, he wasn't able to use his full output of cursed energy because Megumi was fighting inside of him. Well, Yuji and Yuta don't give Sukuna much time to come up with a plan at all because they just continue to bombard him with attacks, and Yuta starts using a combination of the curse techniques he's copied to attack Sukuna, including cursed speech from Inumaki, followed by thin icebreaker again from Uro. But as Sukuna's getting pummeled, he decides to throw a strike of his own and throws a hard dismantle onto both Yuji and Akotsu. Well, after seeing the amount of damage that it did to both of them, Sukuna starts thinking to himself again, if I don't make direct contact, I won't leave a fatal wound, just as it was with him. Although I wouldn't say they surpass him in toughness. And when Sukuna is talking about him, he's referring to Ishigori. Because when we remember when Sukuna was first, fully awakened, he needed to physically touch Ishigori to straight up shred his head. Well, he goes on to say, it's not just because of my diminished cursed energy output from the fight with Satoru Gojo either. All of the sorcerers that have shown up from Jujutsu High have extremely tight defenses. And then there's the Brat's reverse curse technique, not to mention this domain itself. Its sure hit effect is narrowed to apply to myself and only me. Was he capable of this from the beginning? Something like this requires a very sophisticated barrier technique. So here Sukuna is kind of dapping up Okotsu a little bit. It seems that Okotsu has made it to where his sure hit doesn't affect Yuji, and honestly that's something I didn't consider up until he mentioned it right here. So I guess I'm glad that's getting cleared up, but that just goes to show that Okotsu's level of understanding and manipulating barriers is close to the level of Gojo and Sukuna's, because back in the fight between Sukuna and Gojo, we saw that they were pretty much put up on a goated level where they only stand, because they were the only two known people to just be able to adjust their domains on the fly, like change the size, change the conditions, things like that. But it seems that a third has been thrown in the mix here because Okotsu seems to be able to do the same. So this leads Sukuna to wonder, what have they done in the past month to lead to so much growth? And Yuji starts saying hard work and determination, but Okotsu kind of cuts him off and says we cheated. So what he means by that, I'm not exactly sure. And if you consider the existence of the prison realm, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for some kind of hyperbolic time chamber type place to exist in JJK. I mean, when Gojo was locked away in the prison realm, it was said that time doesn't pass inside of it. So maybe, and this is just a theory here, the other end of the prison realm that was used to unseal Gojo might not trap somebody when they enter it like the other side of the prison realm does that took Gojo. So maybe this one has some different properties where they're able to freely enter and leave it. And since the front and the back of the prison realm are connected, it's likely that time doesn't pass there either. So they might have found an interesting little loophole where they enter the prison realm from that one side and are able to train freely for months or even years without time really passing in the real world. I don't know, just an idea, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Well, we stop with the Sukuna inner monologuing for just a second, and we cut to Yuji and Okotsu, and Yuji's thinking to himself, if it weren't for the after effects of his battle with Gojo Sensei, we wouldn't have a second to spare to use our reverse curse techniques. He would have annihilated us in an instant. Well, they then start back up their attack against Sukuna, and we then get the reveal of yet another curse technique that Okotsu has copied. And this is actually Charles' ability, the sorcerer that Hikari fought, the one where he uses this giant quill to draw a small panel on his opponent's chest. And after a certain amount of contact, the panel on the person's chest allows the user to see their future movement for a brief moment, and Okotsu uses this to land a massive hit on Sukuna. So after witnessing yet another curse technique, Sukuna starts to wonder to himself, exactly what curse techniques is he going to be facing here? He starts naming them off. The first one being the Angel's Jacob's Ladder, the second being a space manipulation technique, which of course is from Uro. Number 3 is a technique that creates an inviolable barrier on the path of his Shikigami, which he got from Druve. Number 4 is Cursed Speech, and number 5 is Clairvoyance, which he got from Charles. He then wonders if Limitless is a part of his curse techniques that he's copied, but then he realizes that that's pretty much impossible because you can't control Limitless without the 6 eyes. Well, hey, who needs Limitless when Okotsu has what he's about to use next? Because Okotsu looks at Sukuna and thinks to himself, even Sukuna will be caught off guard by a technique he hasn't seen used. And then he reaches for one of the katanas and he says, finally, this is the one. So he lunges at Sukuna with the katana once again, and of course Sukuna catches it, but this time Okotsu mutters the words cleave as we see a bunch of cutting lines appearing on Sukuna's face. And in the final panel of this chapter, we get a line saying, this is my, and that's Sukuna realizing that he's using his own technique on him, and the editor's comment is bitten by his own fangs. So I'm not exactly sure how it is that Okotsu managed to get Sukuna's cleave. It still isn't really specified exactly how it is that Okotsu copies techniques. All we know is that they're stored in Rika, and that Rika might have something to do with the ritual in which Okotsu actually steals the techniques or copies them. Many people theorize that it's when Rika eats a piece of that sorcerer or consumes their blood in some way. That would make perfect sense. I mean, Sukuna has bled several times throughout this fight, but we're likely gonna get an explanation to that next chapter. This one though was filled to the brim with action, which of course I'm not gonna complain about. I'm always surprised how much information Gege can fit in one chapter while also giving us a ton of action sequences. I mean, after all this time, he's really mastered the craft, right? Well, let me know what you guys think about this chapter in the comments below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you a little bit confused as to what's happening? I know I had to reread the chapter a few times to really understand what was going on, but that is it for this video. Have an absolutely wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, whatever, and I'll see you guys in the next video.